every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where sports meets that thing called life. So always happy to be here with you, hanging out inside of these Cafe Kubal studios. You know that Cafe Kubal is located for you on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, as well as 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, New York. They're also located on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their giant behemoth of a brown-striped building, so don't miss out on the opportunity to see them there on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius. You cannot miss it. I call it the Manlius Welcome Center, right there where all roads converge into Manlius. And, of course, you could see them in their one-year anniversary location, their drive-through location on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. So, happy to be here with you inside of these Cafe Kubal studios, and I hope that you are having yourselves a tremendous, tremendous day today as we have an awesome show set up for you, all about the wacky world of conference realignment. We looked at some different things and some different ways to do this, but for those of you that are listening, you wouldn't be able to see, obviously, either way, and for those of you that are watching, I wanted to make it a more close-up, more intimate thing. So I know I told you I was going to break out the whiteboard, but even though it'll look black on your screen, it's called the whiteboard, and digitally we're going to show you what conference realignment looks like on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. So I'm very happy to be able to bring that to you and show you exactly what conference realignment looks like and how crazy and how wacky of a world we're really living in when you look at the geographical footprint of some of these conferences. And what I find really funny is that back in the day, when the Big East was still around, right, around like 2011-ish and whatnot, back in that day, we were talking about, oh, well, the Big East is going to have TCU and San Diego State and this and that, whatever, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's ridiculous, and, you know, how could they do something like that, and they're reaching out to Boise, and that doesn't make any sense. Well, you know, that's what people said back in the day, but the funny thing about life now, and you know, it always seems to be special people have special rules, right? Because when you think about it now, you know, and you talk about it now, there's this conversation of, well, you know, well, yeah, I mean, the Big Ten's doing it, but it's the Big Ten, Dan. And it's like, yeah. So, yeah, it's the Big Ten, but they're doing what the Big East was going to do. They're doing, you know, the American Athletic Conference, right, to have a footprint and to be in a bunch of different places. It was frowned upon before, and now it's, okay, well, you know, you do what you got to do. And it's treated as normal right now, which I think is kind of ridiculous and kind of funny at the same time, that we're dealing in this world of, yeah, you know what, if you do it now, well, then we understand because conferences are just trying to stay alive. But in the past, it didn't make sense to people, right? They thought that there had to be some type of geographical barriers and something that made some type of logical sense. And that's not what's happening right now by any stretch of the imagination. In the world that we live in today, things are vastly different. They look different. They feel different. And I don't know if they can get weirder, is what I want to say. But Lord knows that they can get weirder. And they will get weirder, and just by me uttering, I don't know if they can get weirder. They probably just got weirder in the background of this conversation right now. Because conference realignment is very confusing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it throws a lot of people out. And that, to me, you know, throwing people off the way that it does puts us in a situation where we're trying to understand it. We're trying to get it. We're trying to wrap our heads around it. And it's not an easy thing to do. So today on the broadcast, we're going to wrap our heads around it. Today on the broadcast, we're going to work to understand conference realignment, and we're going to try and put this thing together. So with you here today on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets that thing called life. So thank you for joining the show. Thank you for hanging out with us inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. And you know that my studios have been decked out even more so here as we have our Cuse signs that are out here, our pillows that you have Cuse Home Sweet Home. You have the 315 with the new dome logo inside of the 315. You see it right there on the bottom. And we also have 315 Home Sweet Home that's right here. And of course, I'm always doing a show with a Witty Wicks candle here in the studios. Windows Wide Open is the one that I've chosen. And Aubrey, if you didn't hear me say it yesterday, I would love to come up with an idea for a colossal candle and make Windows Wide Open one of those just giant. Let's just make a big ol' Windows Wide Open candle. So would love to do that, but you know that here inside of the studios we have a bunch of Witty Wicks things, and we're very proud to work with Witty Wicks. You can shop at wittywicks.com. You can also go and see them in Township 5 in Camillus, New York, right by the movie tavern. And everything that's here in the studio that I just pointed out, the 2 Q's pillows, the 315 sign, and of course these awesome candles are all available for purchase at Witty Wicks' store. So make sure you go out there to Township 5 and buy local and do it today, because the people that make these signs and pillows are local. And of course, these Witty Wicks candles were created right here in central and upstate New York. So make sure you head out to Witty Wicks today. Let them know that Wake Up Call sent you, and support local products. So with that being said, we're going to hop right into things here when we look at conference realignment. Now, I put out a story yesterday, and it would behoove you to go to that story and to read it, because there's a lot to be had in that story. There's a lot to understand, and there's a lot of things that I put out for you in that to help you kind of be a primer to today's broadcast as we take a look at conference realignment and how, not only have things realigned, but why they did. Why have things been shaped the way that they've been shaped? Why are we living in the world that we're living in today? And so it's very important that you take some time to take a look at that and to read that article to show you, the domino effect, how one thing led to another, led to another, led to another to bring us where we are today with this world of conference realignment and readjustment, so to speak here. And the Big 12 is already in the news this morning. And I was like, I could do this show in the morning, and it could be different already. So the league allegedly now, I did not have this conversation, so I have to say allegedly, because if it's not my source, I don't know, exactly who that is. So Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado are allegedly meeting with the Big 12 this morning. And so that would put the Big 12 in a unique situation. They would have a team in West Virginia. They'd have a team in Ohio. They'd have a team in Iowa. They'd have one in Florida. They'd have 4 in Texas. So why don't we do that? Why don't we take a look at that right now, since I told you we're going to bring up the map here. So why don't we bring up the realignment map, right? Cue the map, and there it is. So we'll take a look at this map here right now, and I'm going to put in the corner here so we know who we're talking about. I'm going to put right in the corner here that we are discussing the Big 12. Okay? So the Big 12 has a team in Florida. They have a team in West Virginia. They have a team in Iowa, right? So you take a look at that. They have 4 in the state of Texas, the Big 12, and that's where we associate, right, the Big 12 with. We associate them with the Oklahoma area, the Texas area, and the Kansas area. They only have 1 team in Oklahoma right now, which is weird to say, because Oklahoma is leaving for the SEC and Oklahoma State is staying in the Big 12. So they still have teams in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. They have 2 in Kansas, 4 in Texas. Like I said, 1 in Oklahoma. And then if they were to expand out here, we know that in Utah, BYU is there. So we know that they're getting BYU from the West Coast Conference in all sports except for football, and that BYU now has a home for football after being independent. And this is a giant move for BYU, right? Nobody has the contract that Notre Dame has to make that money. So when they're an independent school, so to be able to move all of your sports here, if you're BYU, to be able to move here to the Big 12 from being independent in football is huge, because now you have that Big 12 name connected to BYU, which is massive for them. If they were to take Colorado back, they would have Colorado, and if they take Arizona and Arizona State, they would have Arizona. So if you look at the map here for the Big 12, it's still situated mostly here inside of the Midwest, right? It's right here, still with a giant focus on Texas, which now the American Athletic has as well, and they've moved to Irving, Texas, their headquarters. So I think that was strategically done, and I think they knew exactly what they were doing in this respect, because a lot of these chips of realignment seem like, once they fall, you look back on things going, did somebody know about that? Were they kind of preparing for something like that? So a move to Irving, Texas made a lot of sense for the American Athletic Conference after being in Providence, Rhode Island when they were the Big East. So a lot of what we see in the Big 12 is still situated right here in this area, right? But you got one team in Florida, okay? You got one team in West Virginia, and you got one team in Iowa, and then you would have one team in Colorado, which makes life a little bit different here. I mean, the Colorado stays within this circle, and Iowa, does as well. But then you have your outlier of West Virginia and your outlier of Florida. It's never bad to have a Florida team. And West Virginia, I mean, are they what they used to be in football? No. But, they're I think West Virginia would make more sense moving over here to the ACC in the Atlantic Coast Conference and putting them here. I mean, look at if we take a look at West Virginia, let me clear off this board here so we can take a firm look at West Virginia. But if we take a look at West Virginia here, right, and so West Virginia is situated right here. If we take a look at them, look at where their rivalries could be, right? Now, they already have a history with teams. So you would have Pitt right here. You would have Syracuse right here. You would have Boston College, right? That would be up in here as well. And so Massachusetts, obviously. So you would have BC, Syracuse, and Pitt. Here's the funny thing. The ACC just went to a 3-5-5 model, and the 3-5-5 model would have made perfect sense if West Virginia was in there, because their all-time their three consistent rivals could have been Syracuse, Pitt, and Boston College. If you could work in a 3-5-5 model of another conference, you probably belong in that conference, in my opinion, because West Virginia has really, I mean, to me, where's the rival? Who's the team that they're going to rival inside? Maybe it's Cincinnati now, right? And also with the Big 12, I didn't circle that, but Cincinnati right here in Ohio. So, I mean, maybe it's that now, Cincinnati, West Virginia, that creates some type of rivalry. But West Virginia's longstanding rivals exist in the ACC. So just hear me out for a second here. If we had the Mountaineers, okay, so we're talking about West Virginia, okay, WVU. So we're talking about the Mountaineers here. We're talking about West Virginia in the ACC. If that were to happen, just hear me out here. So they would have Pitt, they'd have Syracuse, they would have BC. They would be right here with Virginia, which could create some really interesting rivalries with Virginia and Virginia Tech. Look at where they're sandwiched in the middle of everything. Then you got the North Carolina teams. You got your Wake Forest, you got your North Carolina, Duke, NC State. And then West Virginia, you have the opportunity here with Clemson, and you have Georgia Tech, and then you have Miami, and you have Florida State. So look at where West Virginia is, and we look at the Atlantic Coast. That would make geographical sense. Also, I think the Big Ten should allow Maryland, and Maryland is all up in this region here. I believe if you look at Maryland, right, they used to be in the ACC. This would make sense too. I think if we were able to see an ACC that had Maryland and maybe this is the way it's going, okay? Maybe that's the way it's going. The ACC would make a lot of sense to do something like this. If we saw an ACC that did that, I think that we would be in prime position here. If we got to see, and let me just take this down here for a second. But if we got to see that, I think that would be huge to see an ACC that would have all of that would have this entire area locked up, and that to me would make a whole lot of sense, because The ACC, that's where they would. Maryland used to be there, and of course, not only with Maryland, having used to be there, but West Virginia with all of those rivals that they already have. So here's my thought. If conference realignment, we think that it's really, what we've learned about, this year in 2022 is that it's never done. And with us knowing that it's never done, that maybe we could look at this model and say, okay, what about an ACC with Maryland and West Virginia? Because if this is the way the conferences are going and this is the way it's going to be, then we could be in a situation right now where, think about it. The ACC right now has 14 schools that are competing in football, right? They have 14 schools. They got all of their members except for Notre Dame. Notre Dame doesn't compete in any conference in football. I think that could be changing. What I find to be very interesting, though, is the fact that, the Notre Dame conversation, if it made any sense, it would make sense with the ACC because they have all their sports there. They've already done that in the pandemic in 2020. They played that year, remember? They put themselves in that situation where they signed that temporary contract where they got to be a part of the ACC. And think about what the ACC was doing back then, because again, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in coincidences, and a lot of this stuff in the world of sports, it's coming to life. So, and good morning to mom. So, a lot of this stuff that we're seeing is coming to life in sports and in this realignment. So, just hear me out on this, right? We have Notre Dame, right? We have Notre Dame that was part of the ACC in football temporarily during the pandemic. I think the pandemic it's just weird, right? When people say, now obviously the disease is real, right? What's going on is a very real thing. It's a very sad thing, and it's a very horrible thing that we have been living through right now. And at the same time, I feel like the pain together and it's all going to be okay because you're our buddy and you're our friend. So let's just put you inside of the ACC just to see how this model would work in the future if we were to do something like this. So let's just put you in there. And let's dissolve of our divisions to see how this would work out. Okay? Now, looking back on this, I'm saying to myself, now I thought it was fishy back then, right? Because when you get somebody to sign once, it's easy to get them to sign again. And, that's just business. When you get somebody to feel good and trust you and sign you the first time, it becomes easier for them to sign again and again and again because they're in the habit of signing and agreeing and working things out with you. And if they're in the habit of working with you and you do what you're supposed to do and they do what they're supposed to do, then it stands to reason that you'll continue to work together. So when we look at this conference situation during the pandemic, it made perfect sense for the ACC to go to Notre Dame and say, hey, we're all friends here. Why don't you come inside of our conference, jump in our bubble, and then they decide we're going to test getting rid of divisions, and we're going to test having Notre Dame in here. Well, Notre Dame was immediately successful. They played in the conference championship against Clemson, and being a part of all of that, they got to see what it was like to be in the Big East as a full, complete member at the same, pardon me, not in the Big East, in the ACC as a full, I'm thinking about history and what it could have been, but being in the ACC as a full, complete member and being in a non-division ACC, mind you. So look back at what the ACC did. They tested out Notre Dame and they tested out no divisions at the same time. And now they're in a situation in realignment where I'm sure I shouldn't say I'm sure because I'm not privy to the inside conversation, but I'm confident. I'm very confident that the conversations that had probably already been happening, in my opinion, let me state in my opinion, so people don't go crazy, but in my opinion, these conversations, I would imagine, were already going on. between Notre Dame and the ACC. They probably have gone on before. They probably went on 10 years ago in realignment, and they probably went on during the pandemic, and they probably went on to say, hey, Notre Dame, how'd you feel about being in our conference? Would you like to keep your football in here? And they probably went on again now. They're probably going on right now, in my opinion, because of the fact that look at realignment right now and look at what's happening. And everybody's on the table, right? BYU just gave up their independence in football. I understand that BYU is not Notre Dame and Notre Dame is not BYU. I get that. Okay, I understand that before you scream at me and go, Dan, don't compare the two of them. Look at the amount of money that Notre Dame makes. I get it. I feel it. I understand it. Okay, but taking a look at the ACC and taking a look at this model, if we're in a situation here where anybody is going to be joining the ACC, I think there's three schools that make perfect sense. Now, we know that the Big 12 has made a giant footprint in this area, right? And we know that they've extended out to this area. So the Big 12 has made a big footprint here, and now they're trying to take this area. They're trying to take more than half of the United States as a footprint, the Big 12 is. So what does the ACC need to do? Now, if you're one of those quote-unquote Power Fives, you're one of the autonomy group conferences of the Big 10, the Big 12, the Pac-12, the ACC, and the SEC, well, the SEC has expanded, right? The Big 12 has expanded. So now, and the Big 10 has expanded, and the Pac-12 may be dying. So the ACC, it would behoove them to expand because now everybody's looking at this corridor. Everybody's looking here, okay? And the Big 12 has already expanded out here. The Big 12 has already taken things there. So if the Big 12 is already here and the ACC is here, and the ACC is a conference that hasn't made any moves yet, I would imagine that the ACC is going to have to start making some moves. And the moves that I think that the ACC could be making are right here in Maryland. This area, right here in Maryland. Sorry, the map is small in that piece. But in Maryland, in West Virginia, and in South Bend, Indiana, with Notre Dame. I think it would behoove the ACC. Now, Notre Dame is a good fit. Okay, Notre Dame is a good fit because Notre Dame plays the ACC pretty much like they're already a member, but they don't play enough games. They play almost enough games, right? They don't play 8. They play like 6. They play close. So the majority of Notre Dame's schedule is dedicated to the ACC, but they have a deal with the ACC. And, you know, Notre Dame has been able to call the shots for forever and a day, and this is what I see happening. Now, the ACC right now has 14, right? If they were to add Notre Dame, and it doesn't matter if it's uneven because they don't have divisions anymore, if they added Notre Dame, that would give them 15. The Big 10 will have 16 with USC and UCLA, and then Oklahoma and Texas give the SEC 16. So the ACC right now, they want to show they're still a power conference, right? Now, keep in mind, the Sun Belt Conference, they have 14. They will have 14 in their expansion. The American Athletic will also have 14. So they have the same amount as the ACC. So what's the ACC's play? Their play is to expand. They need to expand. Because if you stand still right now, people will be leery that someone's going to poach from the ACC, which is located here in this area. So if somebody were to poach right now, the Big 12 is taken off everywhere, and the Big 10 doesn't care, right? The Big 10's got teams from California coming over here to the Midwest. It doesn't make any sense. And the Big 12 is trying to pull, allegedly trying to pull teams in this area to come to their Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma-based space here. So this is what we're looking at right now, and it can get confusing, and it should be confusing because geographically it makes no sense. But hear me out. The ACC has to expand. They have to. Because if they don't, they're the only power conference. Who would have thunk that one of these power conferences would have eaten another one of the power conferences? This is a different move. Now, Ross said, have a great show and cool Venom shirt. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah, Venom with the O. And I wore this Venom shirt not only because he's one of my favorite anti-hero villain heroes of all time. He's really a little bit of everything. So if Venom was in a conference, he'd be in every conference because he'd be kind of floating everywhere, right? He's a hero, he's a villain. He's not quite a hero, but he's not quite a villain, so he's an anti-hero at times. But I'm wearing this shirt because of Venom, right? He's eating. He's always hungry. These conferences are eating each other. They're pulling in parts of the United States. I think at some point these teams might go, you know what, or these schools might go, you know what, screw it. I'm going to take England. You take Spain. I'll take Italy. And of course, I'm kidding. But conference realignment, maybe not, who knows. But conference realignment, as we look at it here today, it is venomized, right? Because people are going after each other and they're trying to not only eat up what's available or even what's not available. I never thought that Oklahoma and Texas were going to be available. I don't think anybody did. I don't think anybody thought UCLA and USC would be available. But what USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, and Texas have shown us is that everyone is on the table, everybody is available, and nothing is out of the realm of possibility. That's what realignment has shown us. So when you look at a map, it doesn't make sense anymore. Because if I asked you in the past what you thought, would make perfect sense, and I'm going to get to my ACC point in a second. I didn't forget about it. So if I asked you what made sense, right? And we were talking about the conferences that we were used to, right? We were used to the Big East was up here, right? That's where the Big East was. The ACC was on the Atlantic Coast because that's what makes sense, the Atlantic Coast Conference. The Pacific Athletic Conference, high, was on the Pacific Coast. And maybe it could have a Hawaii, but it was right here, right? This is where it was located. If I told you the Big 12, you came down here. If I told you the Big 10, you went up here. I mean, that's what made sense to us, right? The Mountain West was over here. And these are the things that have made perfect sense. The MAC was all up in this region, right? In the Midwest. This is what used to make sense. But now it's not. Now you got people, it honestly looks like flight patterns. It's like this person's going, it's become this crazy model where it genuinely just looks like a bunch of flights are flying back and forth. That it's become normalcy for these conferences to have what they have. Now, when the American chose to call themselves the American, they got hip to the game because they said, listen, we're not going to put a number in there because realignment can change that number. Smart. We're not going to put a name of a region because the regions don't make sense anymore. Smart. So they said, we're the American Athletic Conference, right? And then they moved to Texas, which made a lot of sense because Texas is a massive state, it's a Lone Star State. Some people think it functions on its own, and sometimes people think that's a good thing. Maybe it could be. So we look at Texas, right? And we say, okay, so the American Athletic is in Texas. The American Athletic is in Oklahoma. The American Athletic is in Louisiana. The American Athletic is in Florida. So we start to see them creeping into different places, right? We know that they're inside of North Carolina, and then we look at it and say, okay, well, they're up here in Maryland as well, right? And so as they outstretch themselves, the American Athletic Conference doesn't owe anything to anybody to explain why they have what they have. They could take a team from here. 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 Why? Because it's American Athletic Conference. So, calling something the Mountain West right now doesn't necessarily make sense. And calling something the Big East right now doesn't necessarily make sense because you have teams that are not in the East that are playing here. And the Atlantic Coast Conference has made a good amount of sense. But then you start to spill over from, Indiana when it comes to Notre Dame and whatnot. And then the SEC, we're used to the SEC being right here, right? But now the SEC said, give me Texas, give me Oklahoma. So now the SEC is like, give me the entire South. Smart for the SEC because it may not make sense to you, Oklahoma and Texas in the SEC, but when you see it on a map, why doesn't that make sense? Makes perfect sense to me. It's right there in the South. And they've already taken a chokehold of the South, of Georgia, of Florida, of Alabama, of Mississippi, of Louisiana. So why not Texas? Of Arkansas. So why in Tennessee and Kentucky? So why not take Texas? Why look at where we are. Look at where the footprint is of the SEC. That's the SEC. And they make a lot of sense still, geographically. The American can go anywhere. Geographically, the Southeastern Conference would be here. But South, as a key thing here, look at this, right? And the rich get richer. You got Texas and you got Florida. Big time states, right? And then you pull in Oklahoma, and you already have this region, and you take this region, and you take that region, and Missouri doesn't make any sense, but you take that region. And so now you have, this is the SEC, and this makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. But now, when you look at the Pac-12, you're losing 2 teams that are here, right? 2 teams. Because they're jumping over here. So now what do you do if you're the Pac-12? Do you grab after the Mountain West, right? Because you got to keep some type of this alive, right? And then you still have some teams there. You have to keep some type of that region alive. Who do you go after? Do you go after Boise State if you're the Pac-12? Okay, you have Washington, you have Washington State, you have Oregon State, all that good stuff. Do you go after UNLV, right? If you're going to lose Utah, you go after Utah State. They've been successful in football. If you lose the state of Arizona, then where do you go from? Do you come out here a little bit farther? Does the Pac-12 and do the Pac-12 and the Mountain West combine? And do we see that? Now it could look very different and feel very different, but if you have Wyoming and you have this area, right? You have Wyoming and Montana. Do you start to do that? And does this become the Pac-12? So then the SEC has this region, the Pac-12 has that region, right? And now it looks more regional to make a little bit more sense of this thing. Because some conferences they don't need a region like the American Athletic. But this is where, I'm sitting and I'm talking with you and I'm asking you this question is, let's go back to the ACC, right? Because the ACC I've covered for over a decade now? About a decade? Yeah, about a decade now. I think next year will be a decade. So I've cut closely covering the ACC. So in looking at the ACC and looking at the situation that we're in right now as we're inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, the ACC, it would behoove them. Now, I know the Big Ten's getting strong, but the ACC has to show their strength. They have to show their might. They have to show that they have a better brand. The Big Ten just pulled from the Pac-12. They said, screw your Pac-12 network. Screw everything you got going on. The Big Ten network's better than you. We're better than you, and we're going to take USC and UCLA. We're not going to take Washington. We're not going to take Arizona State, right? We're not going to take some teams that are okay but not great. We're going to take your identifying teams, right? That's what the SEC did, the Big 12. We're going to take your identifiers. There's nobody that's a Big 12 fan that doesn't say that Oklahoma, I guess maybe some people can, but when it comes to football, Texas and Oklahoma. With basketball, you can argue Kansas, but you can't argue anybody else in the Big 12 is going to be your identifier. Baylor plays well, but they don't get the respect that they deserve. They're not your identifier. Kansas State's not your identifier. Texas Tech's not your identifier. So Oklahoma and Texas, the Big 12 didn't just lose 2 schools. They lost their 2 identifiers. The Pac-12 lost their identifiers, USC and UCLA. UCLA for basketball forever, and obviously in football, and USC for football prowess. And there was a time where USC sending guys to the NFL, they're sending them high. They're losing, the Pac-12 lost their identifiers to the Big Ten. So now the ACC has to make a pull. The ACC has to go after other conferences. They have to go after the power conferences. They have to. Now, does Syracuse want to travel to Oregon? No. I would say no. But, what could the ACC do? They could take West Virginia from the Big 12, which isn't a massive loss to the Big 12, right? It shows that the ACC has some power, but they're not poaching something massive. I would love for Cincinnati to go to the ACC. I would love for some of these teams to maybe turn the plane around and go, wait a minute, whoopsie, but let's figure out what we're going to do. But looking at the situation that we're in right now with the ACC, they have to make a move. Now, if they go after Maryland of the Big Ten, they're not really hurting the Big Ten. If they go after West Virginia of the Big 12, they're not really hurting the Big 12. But they're helping themselves, and they're helping their brand, and they're helping to have complete rivalries that are already pre-existing. So West Virginia, having that with BC, having that with Pittsburgh, having that with the Virginias, obviously creation of that, connected area, and Syracuse and whatnot. So I would like to see West Virginia there. Maryland makes sense because Maryland has rivalries historically with Duke and North Carolina and so on and so forth. So Maryland would make sense there as well, and you put them close to Pitt, you put them close to SU, you put them close to Boston College, so that starts to make sense of other things as well, and I think that that would help out. Now, that would bring the ACC to 16 full-time members, which would put them on the same level as the SEC and the Big Ten. At the same time, if Notre Dame is in play, there's only one conference that should be getting Notre Dame, and that's the ACC, because the ACC has done right by Notre Dame, and Notre Dame needs to, they need to look at that and look at that situation. Now, if I'm Notre Dame, I'm going to the Big Ten, okay? If I'm Notre Dame, I'm going to the Big Ten, and I'm going to the Big Ten because look at the situation of the Big Ten right now. Now, if we look at the Big Ten conference and we look at the Big Ten map, I want to showcase for you what the Big Ten map looks like. Now, I believe that we should have these, in my opinion, I believe that the Big Ten, in my opinion, right, the Big Ten, now what would be awesome, and we'll talk about this in a second here, but the Big Ten, to me, if I'm Notre Dame, that's where I'm rocking, okay? Because now I want you to look at this. I want you to look at the Big Ten map with me. So let's take a look at the Big Ten. Now, if the ACC loses Notre Dame, they're going to lose Notre Dame altogether. Think about that. If the ACC loses Notre Dame, that means they've been sharing revenue with Notre Dame for all sports but football. They bit the bullet and said, okay, we'll take Notre Dame for everything except for football. We'll let you live in our world just like the Big East did. And you don't but remember, keep in mind, they put them on the schedule as almost a conference team in football. They're playing almost 8 games, but not 8 games against the ACC each season. The majority of the season of Notre Dame dedicated, right, to playing these ACC teams. So you're playing these ACC teams, maybe half of your schedule. So you're looking at that. Okay, that's something. You came into the ACC during the pandemic for a year. That's something. You came into a non-division ACC. That's something. So the ACC was set, in my opinion, has been grooming and setting up and constantly trying to get a little bit, and Notre Dame, and I would imagine Notre Dame knows this, and Notre Dame is probably milking it, right? Okay? You know that this person wants to date you, and you're taking advantage of them. You know that they want to date you. They're courting you. You said no to dinner 20 times. Then you said, okay, let's go to lunch. Then you ate some lunch. They paid for your lunch. Then you got dinner. They paid for your dinner. Then you walked with them. You didn't kiss them, but you held their hand. Then you thought about kissing them, but you kissed them on the cheek. Now, Notre Dame may recently here in 2020 with the divisions and joining it for a second, they gave you a kiss on the mouth. Now you got a kiss on the mouth. You got handhold. You've been to dinner. You've been to lunch. But now the ACC is like, okay, now I want you to be my girlfriend. I want you to be with me. I want you to dedicate yourself to me. And Notre Dame, I don't know. But then that ring comes, okay? Then that ring comes, and then that's when it's real. Notre Dame has been courted by the ACC since the beginning. For almost a decade now, in my opinion, they've been courted by the ACC. Now, the ACC, not that other people aren't trying to date Notre Dame, because I'm sure they are, but including the Big Ten. We'll talk about that in a second. But the ACC makes perfect sense for the ACC. But for Notre Dame, not necessarily. If the ACC loses Notre Dame, they're going to lose them in football, which they didn't have them in, but they almost had them in. So you well, not that you almost had them in, but you got to test them. So if you're the conference that loses Notre Dame, you lose them after having them experience your football conference, and you lose them in all other sports, including basketball, where they have some positives, obviously, on the women's side and the men's side. So if you were to lose that to another conference and the Big Ten got them to not be independent anymore, or the Big 12 got them to not be independent anymore, or the SEC got them to not be independent anymore, then look at where you're at. Then the ACC would take a tragic loss. The ACC would look weak, and they would have to make a decision. Now, I think West Virginia and Maryland make the most sense, and I think they have to make those pulls right now because the Big 12 is expanding and looking better than the ACC. The Big 10 is expanding and looking better than the ACC. So now the ACC has to do something. If they take one from each, then that could be their, hey, we're still here. Now, they're not the top teams, right? The Big 12, as I said, the SEC stole the Big 12's top two. The Big 10 stole the Pac-12's top two. Now, the ACC has to be wary of this because they need to be, just like the American Athletic, in my opinion, should have done, the ACC, they need to be the aggressor. They need to be the predator and not the prey. And right now, they need to make a move for Notre Dame. Because if they got Notre Dame to play football in their conference and sign and stay, then they all of a sudden become the top story. You get West Virginia and Maryland, it's a story. It's good for people like me because it makes geographical sense and I like the rivalries, and I've covered the ACC for almost a decade now, but it doesn't make national news and stick on the top. If you get Notre Dame to play football in your conference, then the ACC would overtake the news right now. They need to make that push. Now, I'm going to show you what the Big Ten looks like. Now, the Big Ten has, right here in Jersey, they have Rutgers, right? The Big Ten has Rutgers, and then we know, obviously, they're in the state of Michigan, and they're in the state of Wisconsin, and they're in the state of Minnesota, and they're in the state of Iowa, right? And then we know that they bring in the Illinois. So, as you look at in Ohio, so as you look at where we are here in this region and in Penn State, we see that this, this speaks Big Ten to us. Well, what's in the middle of all this? Notre Dame. So if you get Notre Dame here, and then you think about the rivalries and the opportunities, right? If you look at the Big Ten and you think about what this could be, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Michigan, right? There's already a rivalry. So Notre Dame, Michigan, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. Could you imagine Notre Dame and Penn State playing every single year? Could you imagine Notre Dame and Ohio State playing every single year? The games that you would get with that, and that to me would be huge for the conference. It would be great. And I think that it would behoove them to do something like that. Notre Dame's rivalries already exist in here, right? Everybody talks every single year. Are they going to fire Jim Harbaugh because he can't beat Notre Dame? So this world would make perfect sense. And it would be a response to this world, right? That is the SEC. Okay? Look at what's happening. And look at the Big 12. Okay? Look at the Big 12. Big 12's got a little bit of this. Big 12's got a little bit of that. Big 12's got a little bit of that. But the Big 12, right? We know the Big 12 for being here, and they could be here. Right? So look at the maps. Remember these maps? So if the Big 12, if this is the Big 12, and this is the SEC, right? They're crossing each other. The SEC is crossing the Big Ten, right? Look at who's left out. The Pac-12. Look at who's left out. Now, California's not, because they're going here. But look at who's left out. Look at the region that's left out. And look at where the SEC has schools. And look at where the Big Ten is. And look at what the Big 12 is doing. This is ACC country. So you got a big old map here for the Big Ten. And you got a big old map here for the SEC. And you got a big old map here for the Big 12. And you got a little line here. Not a little line, but you got a line here for the ACC. They've taken the Midwest, heading toward the Southwest, and they've taken the Southeast. And they've taken a little bit up here, the SEC. The Big Ten has taken the Northeast, the Mideast, and now they're in California. And look at the region that's all by itself. Okay? So you have to follow the bouncing ball right now. The ACC has to make a decision because this is what the ACC is currently protecting. Okay? But it doesn't have the footprint that the SEC has. And it doesn't have the footprint that the Big Ten has. And it doesn't have the footprint that the Big 12 is potentially working to have. Okay? And look at where they're all crossing each other. You think the SEC that's up in here doesn't look at Notre Dame? You think the Big 12 who's up in here doesn't look at Notre Dame? And you think the Big 10 who's in here doesn't look at Notre Dame? So if there really is no Power 5 anymore, which is a media term, and it's just a Power 4 currently, if the 4, according to people in the media, not named me because I believe there's other power out there, but if the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC, okay. So if there's 4 of you, the SEC expanded, the Big 12 expanded, the Big 10 expanded, and ACC has done nothing. So I would imagine at this point, as I said yesterday, thrive or die. That's the situation. Thrive, expand, or die. In this world of conference realignment, expand or die. That's where you are. There are no other options. You have to expand. And so the play for me, in my opinion, the play for the ACC has to be Notre Dame. And they should take West Virginia, and they should take Maryland. They should, because those make sense for them, right? They should do that. That would give the ACC, if they got Notre Dame in football, that would give them 15. Then if they got 2 more, that would give them 17, which would give them 1 over the SEC, 1 over the Big 10, and even if the Big 12 got 4 more schools, give them 1 over the Big 12. And then all of a sudden, of the power conferences, of the autonomy conferences left, the ACC would have the most schools with 17. With 17. Because here's the issue, okay? Here's the issue right now. And this is where my concern lies. The ACC hasn't been as strong in football nationally. Wake Forest didn't get the respect that they deserve. What Wake Forest realized, which Dave Clawson probably already knows, is that if you're not named Clemson, you're not getting in the college football playoff. It doesn't even matter if you beat Clemson. It doesn't matter if you win the ACC. You're not getting in the college football playoff. Okay? 99.9% of the time, they're not going to let you in because it's for Alabama, another SEC school, a Big Ten school, and Clemson. That's what it is. If it stays at 4, that's what it is. Go check me on it, okay? The Pac-12 doesn't get respect. The Big 12 doesn't have Oklahoma anymore. So, and that was the team that was getting in. The college football playoff, as it stands right now, is literally Alabama, other SEC school, probably Ohio State, but some Big Ten team, and Clemson. That's it. If Clemson has a good year, they're in. Alabama's in. Whatever other SEC school, right now Georgia, in. And well, I mean, and they did lose like a ton of their defense, but if they keep doing what they're doing, Georgia in, right? And then you have Ohio State, maybe Michigan. That's what you have. That's what the college football playoff has become. Look at this, though. Look at this, though, okay? The Pac-12 is a conference that looks like it's dying, okay? Let's look at this. The Pac-12 looks like it's dying, right? They haven't had representation in the college football playoff a lot. The Big 12 had to expand because outside Oklahoma, they're not getting it. The SEC has it. The Big 10 has it. And the ACC has it. Okay? So if the college football playoff, look at the two conferences right now that are at 16 schools. It's the Big 10 and the SEC. And what are the two conferences that get the most respect when it comes to the college football playoff? When it comes to the college football playoff, they take a team from the Big 10 and they take two teams from the SEC. And who are the two conferences now that are the biggest? So look at what's happening, folks. Why did the college football playoff conversation pause? It paused for realignment. When Oklahoma and Texas moved, it paused. It went through. Now, we were sent an email of like it has to go to this group, then it goes to this group, then it goes to that group, and I think there was four like stops before they could say, okay, we're going to do it, we're not going to do it. Look at what happened. And why did they decide not to do it? Why did they decide not to do it, right? They decided not to do it. It was up. It was big. It was never going to happen. Then it was going to happen. Then it wasn't. Then it was. Oklahoma and Texas do this thing. It stops. And then they say, we're going to hold off. And then realignment hits again. And you think that that's a coincidence? That realignment hit the way it did when they stopped talking about the college football playoff expansion? They stopped talking about it. What makes sense is they stopped talking about it because the Pac-12 was heading toward its demise, and maybe they didn't know it, or maybe they did. They stopped it because they had to work out a model once the chips weren't done falling. That's why the college football playoff, in my opinion, that's why we stopped hearing about it, because something was going on in the back. How do you think it's coincidental that we're talking about college football playoff expansion to 12, okay, and it's getting pushed through the channels, and Oklahoma and Texas moved to the SEC. They haven't officially moved yet, but state that they're leaving. Why do you think that happened? College football playoff expansion talk stopped. Just right out of the public, right? We talk about it a little bit, but it was like a hold. It was like, we're going. We don't know if we're going. Are we really going? Oh my God, we're going. And then stop. At the edge of the runway, put the brakes on. Why? Because if you look at it right now, look at what the Big 12 did after. Look at what the Big 10 did after. Look at where the Pac-12 is right now. I think the college football playoff conversation stopped because powers that be behind the scenes knew that the musical chairs were not done. The music was still playing, even though people couldn't necessarily hear it. Some people heard it. And this is where we are. So, with that being said, let's take a step aside for a fast break, and we'll come back with more conference realignment talk in how I do not believe in coincidences. I believe in what's called God incidences, because I think things happen not by chance. I think there's a purpose for everything, and there's definitely been a purpose with these musical chairs of conference realignment. We'll talk about more right after this fast break from inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Go on to wittywix.com right now. Make your way over to Township 5 in Camillus and pick yourself up a windows wide open candle or whatever one you'd love to fancy, and put it in your office. Put it in your place of work. Put it in your home. Smells up the room nice, and I got to tell you, now that I have these lit in the studio, life's different. I don't want to not do it anymore. So I'm going to have to, just like you, keep buying these things. And I got a big one this time because, you know, Daddy likes his candles. So we'll take a step aside here inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. We'll be back right after this. Avicolli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicolli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicolli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavicollis.com. That's myavicollis.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout Central and Upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox. As a patient, what do we want? To be cared for, to be listened to, and to have someone walk us through the process on our path to victory. Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics does all of those things beautifully, with Dr. Mark Petropoli leading the team on 791 West Genesee Street in Skaneateles, New York, located minutes from beautiful Skaneateles Lake. Whatever your injury may be from head to toe, preventative care, rehab, physical therapy, laser therapy, and surgery are all available at Victory Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, where they care about us, they listen to us, and they understand that everyone's path to victory is a little bit different. Let them help you on yours by calling 315-685-7544 to make your appointment today. That's 315-685-7544. And find out more information at victorysportsmedicine.com. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. Cafe Kubal on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, as well as 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, New York. You can also find them on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in the Welcome Center to Manlius. It's right there where all the roads converge into Manlius. You can't miss it. Giant brown striped building, looks like coffee being poured, and it's a double-decker cafe. And, of course, you could find them at their one-year anniversary location at the drive-thru on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. So make sure you go and let them know that Wake Up Call sent you to Cafe Kubal. Loving up Cafe Kubal. So, with that being said, we are here in the studios. New digs. We've added some new stuff. We have some awesome made right here in our community. Cuse Home Sweet Home. And we have the 315 Syracuse pillows that are made here in our community. The 315 Home Sweet Home sign. And, of course, these wonderful candles. And you can go and get all of this merchandise by shopping local at Witty Wicks in Township 5 in Camillus. And, of course, you could shop online at wittywicks.com. You will not be disappointed, especially if you get the windows wide open. I love the sweet smells. This is my citrus love right here. So make sure you get your candles from Witty Wicks and all of these wonderful things as we shop local. And very cool, Witty Wicks has inside of their location in Township 5 in Camillus, right by Movie Tavern, they actually sell Ma and Pa's kettle corn and popcorn factory stuff, so which is fantastic. They got the kettle corn right there from Ma and Pa's, and you could go to Ma and Pa's on 201 Old 7th North Street as well in Liverpool, New York, and shop anywhere in the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. Speaking of that, we're talking about what's popping inside of maandpaspopcorn.com. We're on conference realignment. Now, I'm going to bring you through what's been going on with conference realignment. And you gonna learn today, girl. Ooh. So we're gonna learn today about conference realignment. And we're talking about a lot of different things and different pieces to this, okay? Now, as we take a look at this, we take a look at what's happening. As I stated, there's some interesting things going on with conference realignment. Now, the SEC is grabbing Texas and Oklahoma, and that makes sense within their region here, right? That makes sense within their region. What also would make sense with the SEC poaching and these mega conferences, which I don't want to see mega conferences because of the fact that I know the conference commissioners. I mean, we're doing the Commissioner Central series right now, and I don't want to see conferences dissolve. I don't want to lose conferences, right? Because I respect the fact that they're there. I saw some of the once Oklahoma and Texas, and you saw the ripple effect and whatnot. I started talking about what I think with the SEC and what they're going to do and how they're going to break away from everybody and do their own thing. Look at where they are, right? And they have South Carolina, and then they have that rivalry game every year against Clemson in South Carolina. The SEC took the two biggest teams from the Big 12. The Big 10 took arguably the two biggest teams from the Pac-12. The SEC, if they took Clemson, could kill ACC football. Think about it. Think about it. This is where the SEC just added. And could have been I wrote an article about it, could be the demise of the Big 12 and how, and I chose what conferences were going to poach from the Big 12. Like what's happening to the Pac-12 right now is something I thought could happen to the Big 12. And I wrote an article about it, how the American could take, the ACC could take, the Big 10 could take. I had the whole thing there. And the SEC had already taken. And the Pac-12 was going to take 3, and now allegedly the Big 12 could be taking 4 from the Pac-12. So what could have happened is now role reversal. Big 12 was dead, now they're alive. I just wrote an article about it. You gotta read it. It's called Big 12 From Almost Death to Wild Rebirth. You definitely have to check it out. It's good stuff, and I implore you to make sure that you read that today. So this is the SEC, right? So if you're just tuning in here, this is the SEC. This is the SEC's footprint. Okay? They overlap with the Big 12 in a huge way, right? That's why it makes sense for the Big 12 to go out here. Because if the SEC decided to go to the Pac-12, right? They could have 20. If the SEC right now decided to do that, they could have 20. Okay, we're here in the Big 12 doing this, that, and whatever. If the SEC said, you know what? We'll take Arizona and Arizona State. We'll take Utah. We'll take Colorado. Then the SEC would have 20. Which I said they're almost 220. Right now, the SEC has half of the NFL. They'll have 16 with Oklahoma and Texas. If the SEC jumped over the Big 12 and said, okay, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, we'll take you. Who's going to say no to the SEC? Right? Bigger than the Big 10, bigger than the Big 12, bigger than the Pac-12, bigger than the ACC, bigger than everybody. And then the SEC gets all of that. Sans this. Okay? They don't have California. So they would all of that. The bottom half of the United States would be in the SEC. Which plays to my exact prediction and statement that the SEC is going to form its own thing. Be its own entity. Because with 20 teams, and with LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, right? For argument's sake, let's say Arizona. Let's say Utah, because they've done some good things recently. Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn. Ole Miss, Texas A&M that they already had. And now they're into Texas even more so. And Arkansas is getting better. Okay. Look at that. You would be your college football playoff. So why not, if you're the SEC, why don't you go after Clemson? Because if you go after Clemson as the SEC, you're going to kill ACC football, okay? And this is not me being rude. Who else is going to win a national championship out of the ACC right now in football? Who? In basketball, will stay alive, but then it'll be like the Big East. What if they do that? What a crazy occurrence would that be if the Big East, right? The Big East, who's all up in this region. What if the ACC, mind you, okay, of the 15 schools they have, 7 of them used to be in the Big East. 7 of them, pretty much half of ACC used to be in the Big East when we're talking about basketball, right? Because we're including Notre Dame. The Big East dropped football and basketball and all other sports come in, right? So the Big East competes and all that stuff, and they're known for basketball. If the ACC lost Clemson, which isn't a great loss in football, the ACC could become an everything but football conference. Think about it. Just think about it. Think about the irony of this. The Catholic 7 broke away, which led to the creation of the American Athletic Conference, which is now located here. This is in Irving, Texas. So this is where the headquarters is. But think about this for a second. The Big East got rid of football. Okay, before you tell me, well, Dan, it can't be done, listen to me. The Big East got rid of football. When the Big East got rid of football, they had Cincinnati, right? When the Catholic 7 left, they left Cincinnati. They left South Florida. They left Temple. All these teams still compete, right? UConn is now an independent because they made a really stupid decision. They made a decision to go back to the Big East for basketball and totally screwed themselves over with football. But look at the situation. Half of the ACC is the old Big East. The Big East figured out the model of, hey, let's just get rid of football. The schools that are in our conference can play football, just not play here. just not play here. So what if the ACC loses Clemson? Then football-wise, what if they said, okay, you know what? We're really extremely strong in basketball. Right? We're extremely strong in basketball. And if you become basketball centric, you could entice other schools to come in. The problem that I see with this is, why would these schools want to be displaced? But the Big East schools were displaced. The Big East schools were displaced. Okay? So the Big East, all up in here, said, you know what? We're not going to concentrate on football anymore. If the ACC lost Clemson, right? You have Miami down here, and you have Florida State, who haven't vied for a national championship in recent history. Georgia Tech, that's not going to happen right now. The North Carolina teams, that's not going to happen right now. Although NC State and Wake Forest have gotten progressively better. And then we're looking at Virginia Tech, that's not going to happen right now. Then we look at Pitt. Pitt has played some good games, and I believe in Pat Narduzzi, but I don't think that Pitt's beating Alabama right now in this moment. So that's a no, okay? Then Syracuse, I love my hometown, but that's a no. Okay, I told you I'm impartial as a broadcaster. Love Syracuse, want them to win every game. But as a broadcaster, I know that they're not there yet. So that's not going to happen. Okay? So, and then we look at Boston College all up in here, and that's not going to happen. Okay? So if you lose Clemson, then what do you have to vie for a national championship? Wake Forest was already shown they're not going to get the respect. Look at how well their season went. And, you know, I mean, obviously they had some hiccups, but look at how their season went. They weren't getting into the college football playoff. They weren't getting in. Whether they deserved it or not, they weren't getting in. Okay? And I respect the heck out of them. They're not getting in. So, like the Big East, what if the ACC said, screw it, let's focus on basketball? Because who becomes your torchbearer? Who becomes the torchbearer of the ACC if they lost Clemson? Who becomes the torchbearer? Now, the SEC, it would make sense for them to go after Clemson and say, okay, listen, we have Clemson, South Carolina. And Clemson has a better chance of making it out of... Now, I know Alabama's Alabama, but who's the team that's beaten them multiple times in recent history? Clemson has a better chance of getting out of the SEC than Oklahoma or Texas. So I think if Oklahoma and Texas played on the same field at the same time against Alabama, Clemson, on their best day, would have a better chance. So the reality of it all right now in this moment is that Clemson should be very enticed if they got a call from the SEC. And if and when they got a call from the SEC, they have their rival in South Carolina with the Gamecocks. That game becomes even more important. And then you continue to play games in Florida. You continue to play games in Georgia. Think about what that does for Clemson. And if Clemson joins a conference that has Alabama, Auburn, Arkansas, who's getting better, Florida, Tennessee... When I say again, Alabama, Auburn, because there's so many teams in the SEC. Alabama, Auburn, Oklahoma, Texas, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Arkansas, Kentucky, who's had some good moments, Tennessee, history. If you join a conference with all of that, and you put Clemson in there, then it's an open and shut case for me. I already think the SEC is going to break off on its own. If they get Clemson, they have nothing else to fight for. They have the college football playoff. Sans Ohio State or Michigan, but probably Ohio State. Sans that, it's the college football playoff. If Clemson went to the SEC, it's a done deal that the SEC doesn't need anybody at all anymore. They arguably don't need you now. But if they got Clemson, it's done. If they got Clemson, it's over. Put a fork in it. That thing is well done. I don't even know. The fork will probably break trying to put it in there because that thing is so well done. And if you're saying, Dan, you're crazy, that's out of the realm of possibilities, nothing is out of the realm of possibility right now. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility right now, especially not for the SEC. If you've learned anything about college football realignment from this show or in general, it is that conferences can do whatever they want. If the Big Ten is getting UCLA and USC in 2023 next year, then anything can happen at any given time. Okay? So we know the SEC's footprint because I just showed it to you. The SEC has an opportunity to jump over the Big 12 and do this. Think about who they leave if they do that, right? They don't have Ohio State. They don't have Michigan and Michigan State. They don't have Notre Dame right now because I think that's still in play. They don't have Wisconsin, right? They don't, and I'm talking of relevancy, national relevancy, a team that could win national big-time games. And I think even with that, Wisconsin, Wisconsin's, they're good, okay? They're not great. So, really, the SEC is losing. If they did this and they broke away, then you don't have Ohio State and you don't have Notre Dame. But what do you lose? Nebraska? Iowa and Iowa State? Wyoming? The Dakotas? The SEC is fine. They're totally fine. Right there. And if they don't get this area, they're still fine right there. So, to me, this is an open and shut case, Johnson. The SEC should make a play for Clemson and Notre Dame. If they haven't already, they should make a play. And that's not me wishing bad on anybody. This is me telling you the truth. I'm looking at this from an impartial place. If the SEC takes Notre Dame and Clemson, then this is a done deal. It's over. The rest of the country is not going to beat that. It's not going to. It's not. If Notre Dame and Clemson go to the SEC, it's a done deal. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility because nothing is right now. So it would behoove the SEC to make that move. And I'm sure I'm not telling the SEC brass anything they don't already know. But I'm just saying. Because the Big Ten, they'll stay afloat. With Southern Cal and UCLA and everything else they have, they're going to stay afloat. They'll be fine. 2024 they leave. Pardon me. 2024, not 2023. We talked about the Big 12, so let's take a look at some of the other places now, okay? Let's take a look at the American Athletic, because I talk about them a lot on the show. So the American Athletic relocated to Irving, Texas, okay? They have Tulsa. They have Tulane, right? They have Memphis. And they're bringing in UNC Charlotte with East Carolina already there. Good stuff. They're bringing in FAU, and they still have South Florida, FAU in the absence of UCF as an up-and-coming team, as UCF was an up-and-coming team when they joined the American Athletic. UCF's been a part of many conferences. So you take all that. This is the American Athletic, so let me just put it here for those of you that are just tuning in saying, what is this map of? So this is the AAC, right? So you have these teams, and then you have Navy for football that's right here in Annapolis, Maryland. You have Wichita for every sport except for football that's in Kansas. So you start to take up this region, right? And then in Texas now, you have SMU, right? And with SMU, now you lose Houston, but you bring in Rice, who is in Houston, Texas. So you keep the market. This is the smart move about the American. You lost the team that has the bigger name, but you keep the market, right? You keep the market. And you hope that Rice will build, but you don't lose the Houston market. You get to stay in Houston even though you don't have Houston. Smart move by Mike Oresco. So you have Rice, you have UTSA, right? You have North Texas, and you have SMU. So you got 4 teams in Texas. Just like the Big 12. You got 4 teams in Texas, right? And the Big 12 right there toying with the American and just took 3, and the American saying, we're right here. Our base is here. We are here in Texas, and we got as many schools as you do, right? So you have that. Now, in the American Athletic, you look at the other things that they have going on, right? So you move forward here, and you get UAB in Alabama, and that's a hot commodity. That's a good commodity. It's a hot team raising a lot of money. You want to learn about them? I'll be re-putting my show back up with Mark Ingram. You don't want to miss it. Director of Athletics and Assistant VP, don't want to miss out on my conversation with Mark Ingram from UAB with the Blazers. So look at the footprint that you have here for the American Athletic, okay? Now, the American Athletic, when you take a look at overall and what they look like and what they have, that's a footprint of a lot of the teams that have come in and different things that have happened, right? And they could have been a bunch of different things. I mean, different things could have happened for the American Athletic. And when you look at where the American is right now and this footprint that they have and getting into Alabama and expanding in North Carolina, which is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful state to expand in my opinion. So when you have that and you look at all of that and you're in Louisiana and you're in Oklahoma and then you're in Pennsylvania with Temple and you look at being in Maryland with Navy. So you look at all these pieces here. So let me make sure I circle Pennsylvania up here. So the Americans' footprint is in the same region of as the SEC. And now they have 14. They have 15 members. 14 of them are going to compete in football. Biggest they've ever had. This is huge. So the American Athletic is putting themselves in a good situation as well. Because look at the region. And with the Big 12 focusing on Texas and the SEC focusing on Texas, you now have the American focusing on Texas with their headquarters in Texas and 4 teams in Texas. So a lot of it is coming right through the great state of Texas. Right? 3 conferences that will have at least 14 schools in football. Well, the Big 12, we'll see. We'll see. Okay? But right now they have 12. So the SEC and the AAC, right there in Texas, right there, look at what they have. And look at where the region, because this is the SEC. Once again, I'll show you the map for the SEC. This is the SEC region. All right? This is the SEC. Because it's almost the exact same region. The American came up here. The SEC didn't come up here yet. But if they take Notre Dame, then they're up there. The American and the SEC are in the same region, and they've left all of that. Right? And they focused right here. The AAC and the SEC both have teams in Florida, teams in Texas, teams in Oklahoma, teams in Louisiana, teams in Alabama. Right? Look at that. American athletics is not stupid. And Mike Oresco has been around the block many times and affected brutally by the first wave of realignment 10 years ago in this last decade, the first wave of this last decade, I should say, because realignments happened for a long time. But in the last 10 years, when that happened in 2012, it was a butchering of sorts, and Mike rose above it. It happened again now, 10 years later, and Mike is rising above it and focusing on the state of Texas. So the American Athletic and the SEC's footprint as far as states go, very similar. I just find that to be very interesting. Now, the Sun Belt, who I want to give respect to as well, they are vying to be a power as well with the American Athletic. The Sun Belt is losing Little Rock, Arkansas, right? They're losing UT Arlington here, and they're losing Little Rock, Arkansas. So this is the Sun Belt. For those of you that don't know the Sun Belt, we'll talk about Sun Belt now. Because this is another conference that is now going to expand to 14. So the Sun Belt is bringing in James Madison, Marshall, Old Dominion, Southern Miss. So this is what the Sun Belt is going to look like for us. Now, as we take a look at the Sun Belt Conference and what they're going to have, they got a nice expansion here, right? They got a nice little expansion going on. And they're getting Old Dominion. So in the state of Virginia, they're getting James Madison and Old Dominion. That's the Sun Belt we're talking about here. And then they have Georgia State and Georgia Southern in the state of Georgia. They have Coastal Carolina, one of their darlings here, who's only been competing in football for 4 years, this being the 4th year. Think about that. Coastal Carolina has been nationally relevant, nationally ranked, and ranked in the college football playoff top 25, and they only came into the Sun Belt in 2016, 6 years ago, and their football had to transition from FCS to FBS, so they have only been competing really half of their time during the pandemic and the other half right before 2018 and 2019. Coastal Carolina has become a national name in college football, Division I A FBS, and they've only been Division I A FBS since 2018. Awesome fact for you to put in your little pocket and keep for later. So you have that, and then inside of North Carolina, you also have so in the state of South Carolina, you have Coastal Carolina. Pardon me on that if I said North Carolina. So you have Appalachian State, North Carolina, and in South Carolina, you have Coastal Carolina because they're in Myrtle Beach. So in the Myrtle Beach area, my buddy just committed there. Shout out to Matt Chickatano, the tight end / defensive lineman coming out of the most successful, winningest program in Pennsylvania State when it comes to high school football, and that is Mount Carmel in PA. Big shout out to Matt Chickatano, and really excited for what he's got coming up this season. So much love here to Matt Chickatano. Then we have We Are Marshall, right? We Are Marshall, who's coming into the Sun Belt. So you start to take up that West Virginia area, and then you have Troy and South Alabama, which give you Alabama for the Sun Belt. And then you have Southern Miss, and you have ULM in Louisiana. So you have the state of Louisiana for 2 schools, and you have Southern Miss coming in as well. And this is just looking at the Sun Belt here. And then you have Arkansas State. So you have this region right there for the Sun Belt Conference. So take a look at the Sun Belt, folks, okay? And you have Texas State. So you take in the state of Texas. Now you're losing UT Arlington, but you still have Texas State. So looky, we got a cookie. Look at the Sun Belt. So here's the Sun Belt. Here's the American. Here's the SEC. Oh, the SEC's up here too in Missouri. They're all in the same region-esque. So look at that. Look at that. This area. This area right there. You got the AAC. Now, obviously, the AAC spreads out up here in the Northeast a little bit. You got the SEC. And you have the Sun Belt. All in that area. So what do you think when the Sun Belt and the American Athletic are fighting for respect? What conference has the most respect? The SEC. So what did the American and the Sun Belt expand out to? The same region of the country. To stay relevant. And the Sun Belt will have 14. Right? They'll have... The Sun Belt will have 14. Just how crazy this is. That we'll see the Sun Belt with 14, we'll see the American with 14, and we'll see the SEC with 16. At least. At least. At least. Getting James Madison and Old Dominion puts you in Virginia. Getting Southern Miss puts you in Mississippi. Getting Marshall puts you in the West Virginia area. Right? Think about that for the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt is expanding into states it's never been in before. Huntington, West Virginia for Marshall. So the Sun Belt is taking up that same region. So now the Big 12 allegedly is trying to go farther west to take more of that region that we haven't seen the SEC take yet. Conference USA, though, I have to give them credit. Conference USA is losing 9 teams. 9. And they're bringing in 4. Conference USA, when the Big East became no more and Mike Horesco created the American with his staff and they had to bring in schools, they went to Conference USA and took a ton of those schools. Then when they got raided by the Big 12 again, they lost 3 and they gained 6, took them all from Conference USA. The Sun Belt, like the American, like I said, in the same region of the country, the Sun Belt trying to argue that they're a power conference, and the American trying to argue that they're a power conference. The Sun Belt took from Conference USA. So the Sun Belt to expand to 14 in football and to see the American expand to 14 in football, they both took from Conference USA. Conference USA has been the place that when you lose teams, you run to the Conference USA and you build it. The American was built out of taking the Conference USA teams. They've been rebuilt, and I shouldn't say rebuilt, they've been reloaded by taking from Conference USA, and the Sun Belt is loading from taking from Conference USA. And then Conference USA responds by going, okay, we're going to take some more schools here. We got 9 leaving and 4 coming in. And we're seeing schools reclassify, like Queen's University of Charlotte for the A-Sun, right? We're seeing the reclassification of some of these teams so that they can compete and so that they can move. Lindenwood in Southern Indiana, both reclassifying from D2 to D1 to join the Ohio Valley Conference. so that we can see some things change. And there's one conference that has stayed true to consistency. And Dr. John Steinbrecher, the commissioner of this conference, has spoken with me about this. And you definitely want to go back and hear that conversation. Spoken with me about the fact that his conference has boasted of the fact that they have remained consistent. They have remained a consistent conference, which has been huge for them. And when we're looking at this conference, we're looking at the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, right? Some MACtion. And when we take a look at the map, so all the craziness that we've seen with conference realignment, now we get to look at the MAC. And the MAC is a conference that does have some interesting geography when we look at certain things here, but they can also boast of consistency, right? Because you look at the fact that they've really been built out of the Ohio area and the Michigan area, right? So you look here and you look here, and then you got to come up here for Buffalo, right? But when you're looking at where they are in the grand scheme of things, they are a Midwest conference, right? That has a lot of focus in Michigan and Ohio. And that's relevant. And the Mid-American has stayed consistent with their membership. They have 12 in football, and they've kept 12 in football. Ohio, Bowling Green, Toledo, Northern Illinois, Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Central Michigan, Akron, Buffalo, Kent State, Ball State. They've stayed consistent. Okay? They've stayed consistent in their region. And they've stayed consistent. They've stayed consistent in their footprint. You know, and really, I mean, this is what we know them for. And we see a lot of recruiting here. So that makes sense. So this is kind of ripe for the taking right now. This area. Because this is where the country is looking. And this is where like the Big Ten is, and the Big Ten's over here now. But this area is ripe for the taking. So you wonder who's going to get there first. Who's going to go after it first? Because, again, you have Arizona and Arizona State. You still have Stanford up here, right? You have Oregon. You have Washington and Washington State. You have Boise State, right? You have Utah. So there's some stuff here. And then could we ever see this? Could North Dakota turn around and say, well, you know what? North Dakota State, we've won 9 out of the last 11 championships in the FCS playoffs. Why don't we go somewhere? Why don't we leave FCS for FBS? So, but I think that this has a better chance of probably sticking where it is. So the question is, who comes and takes the rest of the Pac-12? And does the Pac-12 try to merge with the Mountain West to stay alive? Who's taking the West Coast? That's the question. And we will have to wait and see. We'll take a step aside for a fast break here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. When we come back, we'll get into the ingredients to success, proudly presented by Avicolli's, in this very special broadcast of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where we are centering on expansion and the craziness that we are living in right now in college football realignment. Realign or die. That's what it looks like. Expand or die. We'll talk about more inside the Cafe Kubal studios right after this. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville beats. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
This is Jimmer Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that, we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York.
Cafe Cabal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecabal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Cabal needs. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
This is is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond. You can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you? Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, hanging out with you. 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street are your Cafe Kubals in Syracuse, New York. You can also find them at the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse in their drive-through location. And, of course, on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York. You can go and find them there as well. So make sure you go to cafekubal.com. For those of you outside of our community, Cafe Kubal, Kubal.com. And, of course, you can order for mobile pickup as well. So with that being said, I want to also let you know that as we are here in the Cafe Kubal Studios, I've decked out my studios here and we've changed up the digs. And for those of you that watch the show all the time, you know that I mix it up here in the back. So we got my Christy Martin stuff behind me here. Got a nice Witty Wicks candle hanging out. We have the 315 Home Sweet Home, and we have the Cuse pillow and the 315 pillow. Those pillows and the 315 Home Sweet Home, as well as these beautiful candles, are all available at Witty Wicks in township5.com. You'll see this stuff inside of the studio here in the month of July, as we're very happy to deck out the studios and smell a little bit sweeter today. So I didn't think the studios could get better. And then you put a Witty Wicks candle in here, and it just makes the whole thing. Honestly, for a guy who's got allergies that are intense, these candles are soothing, they're calming, they smell good, they make the room smell good, and they take out that dampness if there's any dampness. So definitely great to have in your home and, of course, to have in your studio and in your office. So that's why we're happy to have it here inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. So with that being said, I had another note here in the conference realignment conversation that we're having that this really could make some sense for me, is that if the Mountain West was going to bond with the Pac-12 to save these conferences, for argument's sake, I want to look at this with you for a second here. Now, if this were to happen, if the Mountain West were to do this, I mean, the Mountain West, they could really just take from the Pac-12 whatever's left and say, we're not going to bond with you. We're just going to take whatever you have left. And, they could do that. But I'm just looking at this here. Because the Sun Belt has been advantageous and the American Athletic has been advantageous, and they're both in the same region area as the SEC, which is a great model to go. If you're going to go after anybody, go after, the best of the best after that model. But when we look at where the Pac-12 is, right, in this West Coast region, currently, as we take a look at that and where they're sitting at right now, right, they're all up in here. The Mountain West, if they were to take, right, for argument's sake, as we take a look at this, the Mountain West has a bunch of teams already in Nevada, in California. The Mountain West also has teams in Utah. They have teams in Wyoming. They have Boise State, right? They have teams in Colorado. So this would make perfect sense for them to take. They have a team in New Mexico. If they were to do this, they could look at where they are, right? Look at where the Mountain West is. So the Mountain West could say, come with us, Oregon State. Come with us, Washington State. Come with us, teams that are left in California. And then they can make a play. What if they made a play for Colorado? They already have Colorado State. What if they made a play? Made a play for Arizona State, Utah, because they have Utah State. They already have geographic rivalries here. The Mountain West could take, if the Big 12 takes or doesn't take, the Mountain West could take either all of it or the rest of it, and all of a sudden the Mountain West becomes that entire region. So that becomes the Mountain West, and the Pac-12 becomes no more. So if I'm the Mountain West right now, I'm trying to be advantageous to this, right? I'm having a conversation with the Pac-12 about a merger, whatever's going to make sense, because they have the Pac-12 network, right? So, because this is the thing, though, but the Mountain West could turn around and they could call up ESPN and Fox and all the powers that be, and they could say, we have Washington and Washington State, we have Oregon and Oregon State, we have Boise State, we have multiple teams in California, we have teams in Nevada, we have teams in Colorado, we have teams in Utah, and Utah just played really well these last couple seasons, and we have teams in Arizona. That would be a huge play right there. So I know that we're all thinking about what's the Big 12 going to do, right? What are they going to do? Are they going to take this? But what if the Mountain West took it? And let's say the Big 12 took this area, right? So let's shade that in. Because the Mountain West they have a team in New Mexico and they have a team in Colorado. So let's say Utah gets taken, Arizona and Arizona State, and Colorado gets taken. They still have Colorado State. They could still take that region. So with or without those potential 4 teams joining the Big 12, the Mountain West can still take the rest of the Pac-12. And regionally it makes sense, and they can take it over. Form their own network, make their own deal with ESPN, and the Mountain West could take over the Pac-12 and become a potential power out here. As I told you, the American Athletic Conference, the Sun Belt, and the SEC is focused in this region. The Big Ten's focused in this region in California. So all of this region is open for the taking outside of a few of those schools. So to me, the Mountain West has a play right there. The Mountain West has that play. And remember, they have Hawaii as football only. So I think if the Mountain West could take that, then the Big Ten is up here, right? Big Ten is up here. Then the SEC is down here. Then the American is here. And the Sun Belt is here. That's why the ACC has to make a move. Because look at the 3 conferences are here. The overlap that's here in the Big Ten. Like I told you, the MAC is comfortable sitting right here, and their membership has been consistent. So this region of the country is open outside of UCLA and USC. And then you have Notre Dame that the ACC can take. You have Maryland, and you have West Virginia. You got a dense population in this region. You got the Big Ten in that region that's overlapping with the SEC. And like I said, you have the American here. You have the Sun Belt here. You have the Big Ten here. And here. So this is where you have to take. This is where you have to take. And the Mountain West has an opportunity to attack that region. Like I said, if you're not expanding, you could be dying. It's time to act, and the time to act is right now. Perfect timing, too, for the kickoff, right? The ACC football kickoff and the American Athletic kickoff. You can be sure I'm going to be on site, on location, asking questions to these coaches and players because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to get into. And with that being said, speaking of talking about and getting into it, let's get into our ingredients to success, proudly presented by Avicolli's on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York. Minutes, just a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes from Liverpool High School, right? You can literally walk there in a straight line. You just walk right down Wetzel Road and you're there. That's why we are very proud in our community of Liverpool to have our exclusive wake-up call sit-down specials with the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on location, only at Avicolli's on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York. We love Avicolli's, love the Warriors, and love all the things that we get to do with Liverpool, thanks to Ari Lieberman and the entire team there that make it so much fun for us, all the coaches, all the student-athletes, the administration, superintendents, and, of course, Ari, the director of athletics out there. Much respect to Liverpool High School, their expansion. They're looking like a small college right now, so big ups to Liverpool High School and all the greatness that they do there. Ingredients to success. The topic for today, I would say, be yourself is the topic. Because in today's world, so many people are trying to tell you who to be and what to do and how to dress and all this stuff. And really, for me, I think it's incredibly important for us to really focus on being who you are, because why would you want to be anybody else, first and foremost? And when you are somebody else, you lose your identity, right? You lose who you are, you lose whatever you may want to be. And I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think that's good. I think we need to keep who we are. We need to be who we are, and we need to be proud of who we are. And in the world that we live in today, I think it's incredibly important for us to be the best that we can be and to be yourself, right? Because, I'm not immune to it. Sometimes you wake up and you don't like what people say about you. You don't like how people treat you. You don't like that, people make fun of you. People make you feel out of place. People make you feel like you don't belong somewhere. And I'm going to tell you something. You belong wherever you want to be, right? You belong where you want to be. If you want to go to this concert and somebody tells you, well, you don't belong here, that isn't, anybody's entitled to their opinion, right? Everybody can have an opinion. My dad told me a long time ago, everybody's got an opinion like everybody's got a butthole. And, that opinion doesn't, sometimes it stinks and sometimes it makes no sense, right? But it's there, and that's reality. So what can I say to you about being yourself? Well, I can tell you that I've been in a room before where I'm treated like I don't belong. I've been made fun of as an adult. I've been made fun of as a kid. Sometimes being a professional, I've been broadcasting for, it'll be 19 years in November. And as a professional, from beginning to now, there's been people that are rude, disrespectful. People come up to my face, tell me that they make fun of me. That, grown people that could be my dad saying to me, like, oh, I love making fun of you. And it's like, in what world would you tell somebody that? But what I've realized about it is people don't want you to be yourself because they're threatened by you. Jealousy is why people come up to you and make fun of you. Jealousy is why people come up to you and say mean things to you. Jealousy is why people laugh at you. Jealousy is why people think that you're not good enough. Jealousy, that's where it comes from. It's the envy of it. Because when you look at those people that critique you, you say to yourself, they're not even relevant. People that critique me for being a go-getter are typically the quiet people in the room. They're typically the people in the room that stumble over their words. They're usually the people in the room that don't sit in the front row. They're usually the people in the room that don't do the research to ask the questions that I ask. And so you ask yourself, well, Dan, why do I have to deal with, you know what I mean? Like, you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, I'm nice to everybody. So why do I have to deal with people's BS? And everybody has to deal with it, right? Mean people aren't mutually exclusive, right? Mean people are mean to other mean people. Mean people are mean to nice people. But in the same respect, nice people are not mutually exclusive, right? Nice people are nice to nice people, and truly nice people are nice to mean people. You know, being the bigger person. That's the whole point of it. I'm nice to people that aren't nice to me. And you ask yourself the question, well, why do I always get worried about it? Why does it bother me? You can't let it bother you. Okay? You can't. I'm going to tell you why. Because your life is precious. And if you don't appreciate the things that you get to do, and you let people bother you and make you feel uncomfortable, I've had stuff taken away from me, right? The pandemic did that, where I didn't feel comfortable in a room. I was nervous in a room. I let myself be bothered in a room. I let myself feel uncomfortable, and I let myself feel like I didn't belong, and I was paranoid, and I was nervous, and I was scared, and I felt out of place. And then it got taken away from me, and I said to myself, what if I never get to go back to that room again? What if that's the last time I get to stand in that room? And I allowed myself to feel that way in that room. If you're an actor, everybody wants the job that you got. If you're a broadcaster, everybody wants the interview that you got. Right? If you're a business owner, people want to be you because they want to have control of their life. If you go out and you do things in your life that are of merit, that are good, that are positive and are domino affecting, somebody's not going to like you, right? If you're a business and you're next door to a business that doesn't even sell the same stuff that you sell, but people are going into your store and not going into theirs, there's jealousy and envy there, right? There's jealousy and envy at a farmer's market that they're coming to buy your corn and not somebody else's. There's jealousy and envy there. There's jealousy and envy that they come to your law office and not the other law office. There could be jealousy and envy of the same company that they go to your location in Liverpool and not your location in Binghamton. If I've learned anything about my life, some of the people that are closest to you are the ones that are most jealous and most wanting to pounce and take advantage of you or the situation. They'll work with you long enough to understand the model, and then they'll try and copy the model, steal the model, and pretend like it's their model and think that they can beat you at your own game. But if they never had you, they'd never get to where you are. So even if they made more money than you made, even if they got more partnerships than you got, even if they did more than you did ultimately at the end of it all, they would have never gotten there without your help. So you still won. Because the people that steal from you to try and make more money, steal from you to try and get interviews, steal from you to try and get this and get that and get the other thing, without you, they would have never gotten there. So even if in their mind they're more successful, they owe their success to you because they used you to get to where they are. And they don't look at it that way. They say, ha, I used you, I got to where I am, screw you, now I'm standing above you. But without you, they didn't get there. And eventually they're going to need you again. They're going to need somebody else again. And they're going to run out of that well because people that use people, eventually something happens. People that take advantage of people, eventually something happens. Because eventually that well is going to be dry. Or we're all going to rise up. And I'm a firm believer, as this has always happened in my life, and God has shown me this. I am a firm believer in belief without seeing, which is faith. And having the faith, which I didn't always have it, and my mom has taught me to have it, and my grandmother's taught me to have it, having the faith that the people that hurt you and look like they've jumped past you on the mountain will eventually fall down the mountain. They will eventually fall down the mountain. And they'll reach out for you. And they'll try and pull you down with them. Because even when a good person wants to help them, they're like Scar in Lion King. When you even go to help the worst of the worst, they're going to try and flip it over and throw you off. Because even when they're falling down the mountain, some people still haven't learned their lesson. So it's not your fault if they fall down the mountain, and it's not your fault if they take advantage of you. You have to learn from it, you have to gain from it, and you have to move forward smarter. But being yourself is the only thing to be. People will take advantage of you for being yourself. People take advantage of you if you weren't yourself. People will take advantage of you, try to take advantage of you no matter what. And you have to be good, kind, but above all things, I believe in God. Because God is the one friend that's never going to let me down. God is the one friend that's never going to lie to me, take from me, steal from me, backstab me. God is the friend that helps me realize who my real friends are and who my real friends aren't. And actually, right now in this moment is helping me realize who my real friends aren't. Without God, I don't think we have any direction. And without being yourself, you have no identity. So be who you are and understand that no matter what you do and no matter how good it is, people will always steal from you. People will always lie to you. People will always want to take from some. If they're taking from you, it's a backhanded compliment that you have something of value. And the more that you're yourself, and the more that you believe in God, and the more that you're unafraid to be who you are, and the more you go after your dreams, and the more that you try, and the more that you go after the woman or man that you want to marry, and the more that you go after your dreams and aspirations, and the more vacations you go on, and the better you treat yourself, and the better you treat others, you will form many enemies and many friends. And the importance of you is to focus on God, yourself, and the goodness in your life, and forget about your enemies, because they will only try to ruin the great opportunities and events you get to go to. So when you sit in that room, enjoy that room, because you wait all year for that room, and when you're finally in that room, there will be people there. There will be vultures there. And you have to understand that you're not going to let them pick off of you. You're going to be exactly who you are, and no matter what anybody says, if you stop being a go-getter, they win. And they don't care about you anyways, so why let them win? Be who you are. Be strong in who you are. Be strong in your convictions. Love God. Love yourself. Keep your nose clean. Say your prayers and be a good person. That's what my grandma taught me, and it's never let me down. We'll take a step aside for a fast break. This has been the Ingredients to Success, proudly brought to you by the wonderful people at Avicolli's on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York. Head out to Avicolli's today and every single month when we do our Liverpool Warriors exclusive sit-down broadcast with administration, student athletes, and coaches. We'll be doing one coming up here in July, and we're excited to share that with you. In the meantime, share a slice at Avicolli's. We'll take a step aside and wrap things up from the Cafe Kubal studios right after this.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Cabal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafecabal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Cabal needs. Cafe Cabal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant.
Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus, where you will find handcrafted all-natural soy wax candles over 60 cents to freshen up your home. We carry a wide range of locally made items, Salsa Q's, Syracuse Salt, and Chocolate Pizza Company, to name a few. Let our knowledgeable staff help choose unique gifts and keepsakes for any occasion. Gifts for family and friends, and maybe a little something for yourself. Witty Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside of the Cafe Kubal studios, hanging out with you where sports meets that thing called life. And of course, Cafe Kubal located for you on 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, New York, as well as on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, and their giant behemoth of a brown-striped building. The Welcome Center to Manlius is what I call it. The double-decker cafe is there for you. Can't miss it, as well as their one-year anniversary celebratory drive-through location on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners. Make sure you head out to North Syracuse to see them today. I want to give a special thanks to all of you that watch and listen to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where sports truly meets that thing called life, on Facebook.com, YouTube.com, and MixLR.com, all /WakeUpCallDT, as well as on WakeUpCallDT.com and on Facebook.com /LiveNowDT. So make sure that you head out to, make sure you're with us on YouTube, Facebook, and MixLR every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And of course, you could search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And of course, you can search us on Stitcher, Spotify, MixLR, YouTube, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, Amazon Music, Audible, and more. And of course, you can ask Alexa and your Google devices to play the latest episode of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and they'll do that for you as well. So make sure that you search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on any one of these outlets. Podbean alone has over 1,600 episodes of Wake Up Call dating back to 2011 and 12. Thank you to our Central and Upstate New York partners, Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, PB&J's Lunchbox, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Avicolli's, Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Pizza Man, Honda City of Liverpool, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Witty Wicks, Mother's Cupboard, and of course Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is the multimedia marketing partner exclusively of your Lemoyne College Dolphins. It is Fins Up every single month on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. Happy to be here with you Wednesdays at 9 a.m. to bring you Dolphin Time. And the Dolphin Time is every first and third Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. AD and DT with Athletics Director Bob Beretta and myself, Dan Tortora, bringing you updates on many different things, including being the exclusive home of the announcement of the reclassification and realignment potential for Lemoyne, as well as the exclusive updates to that news came to you first here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. No matter what anybody says, you can ask Bob Beretta, you can ask Lemoyne, and you can ask people to pay attention. We have been first to the conversation of Lemoyne when it comes to realignment and reclassification. And every second and fourth Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also check us out in the Dolphin Dive, where we dive into the stories of student athletes, coaches, administration, future Dolphins, and alumni. You can get all of this content by going to the Lemoyne tab on wakeupcalldt.com, subscribing to our youtube.com/wakeupcalldt channel, and for more information on the Dolphins, go to lemoynedolphins.com. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora is also the proud multimedia marketing partner exclusively of your Marywood University Pacers. It is Pacer Pride every single month on Wake Up Call, and you'll be with the Pacers every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We round out the week with the Marywood University Pacers in what we like to call Pacer Pride, and you can check out Pacer Pride with us, like I said, on Fridays, and you can check out our library of Pacer Pride special videos by going to the Marywood tab on wakeupcalldt.com, as well as subscribing to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt for our YouTube channel. For more information on your Pacers, their student athletes, coaches, and administration, go to marywoodpacers.com. The Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse are exclusive multimedia marketing partners here with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and we bring you the Bobcat Buzz in our exclusive multimedia marketing partnership, giving you an extensive coverage of the Bobcats, and already in just a few months, giving you exclusive special announcements and opportunities, with Tay Baker being announced as the women's basketball head coach, Clay Gagan-Sherman being announced as the men's basketball head coach, the retirement from Bryan and Stratton from Danny Frisina, who started the men's basketball program, as well as going on-site on location to Cafe Kubal with Alex Grigorita, national champion, assistant AD, and women's soccer head coach. A special sit-down to get to know multi-time national champion head coach of men's soccer and the athletic director at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, Nick Dimitrievsky, sitting down and getting to know Sean Peak as he creates a new program at Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse with their baseball program starting up this season, and having roundtable discussions, including our Bobcat Takeover that just happened a couple weeks ago. You can get all this content by going to the BSC SYR tab on wakeupcalldt.com. You can also subscribe to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt to get our Bobcat content. And for more information on the Bobcats, go to syracuse.bscbobcats.com. And monthly, we bring you new episodes of the Bobcat Buzz. With that being said, I want to thank you for joining me in our map of conference realignment. I feel like we've had for the first time ever, I got to show a map to you and have some fun with that. So that was cool to work with the map. I thank you for being a part of it. Big shout out to Avicolli's for the ingredients to success and their amazing food. Head out there and grab a slice today. The barbecue chicken pizza as well as the margarita are my favorites. And of course, I'm a huge fan of a bunch of their different sauces they put on their pasta, and a big fan of their veal parmesan sandwich. So make sure you go out and get that today. Thank you to Ma and Pa's for telling us what's poppin', Cafe Kubal for being our studio partner, and for getting to deck out the studios with these new products that we have: 315 Home Sweet Home, the Cuse pillow, the 315 pillow, and of course these wonderfully scented candles. The Windows Wide Open is my absolute favorite. My favorite. I have some good ones at Witty Wicks, but this is my favorite here. You can go out to Witty Wicks and get these pillows, get these signs, and of course get your candles and much more at their location in Township 5 in Camillus and on wittywicks.com. For now, from the Cafe Kubal Studios, we thank you for being here. Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram